honorable judges and fellow debaters, we the pro side strongly believe that the world will be a better place if there are fewer languages. And our core value is that with fewer languages comes with more convenience of communicating. First of all, we would like to define some of the phrases used in the topic. According to the study guide, the word fewer could be interpreted simply as a smaller quantity which may bring about a difference in some way in the world. Furthermore, the definition of better contains many aspects, including less economic decline, better communication, and less misunderstanding. Those can all be considered to be a better world. Now, I'll continue with several arguments that the world will be a better place if there are fewer languages. The main focus of our points revolves around fewer languages that can let people communicate more efficiently and decrease language barrier. First of all, according to a book written by David Elan and published by the Cambridge University Press, if groups of people in the same country speak completely different languages will often incite conflicts. Language barriers are significant because they are often an obstacle to build relationships with others. They can cause misunderstandings that lead to conflict and violence. For instance, a year after the Dominion of Pakistan was created in 1947, the central government located in Urdu-speaking West Pakistan declared Urdu a state language, which was unacceptable to many in Bengali-speaking East Pakistan. It was seen as an affront to their culture and language and an attempt to take in East Bengal. Thus, if there are fewer languages, we can decrease language barriers and avoid conflicts or warfare like the incident we argued before, which is able to lead to a more harmonic world. Secondly, according to the research from the University of Jordan, language barrier takes up to 47 of global obstacles to communication, which certainly affect the efficiency of communication. Also, when people share languages, the information and ideas can flow more easily, as announcement can also be spread more easily. 1.3 billion Indians speak between 22 officially recognized languages. This language diversity creates a huge gap in languages, while North Indian and South Indians cannot communicate properly due to language barrier. Therefore, it is hard for announcement to be spread, while it will bring harms to such as promote COVID-19 vaccine. Thus, if there are fewer languages, announcement can be spread more easily and be easier for communication.
Moreover, language gap may be seen as that there is not a specific word to represent an idea or object from another language or country. These gaps can be noticed when a language comes into contact with another language or country. For instance, when we compare Spanish and English, we find multiple examples of gaps, such as the lack of words in Spanish to refer to the English word community. Thus, we the pro side have plenty of reasons to believe that with fewer languages, this kind of communication gap can effectively decrease and thus increase the communication efficiency and avoid translation errors. Furthermore, language barrier index, which has showed that language barriers are significantly negatively correlated with two-way trades. The language barrier index measures international language barriers by measuring the difference between the main languages of trading partners. According to an article on ScienceDirect.com, a 10% increase in the language barrier index could result in a 0% to 10% decrease in trade flow between countries. Language barrier can cause confusion and also can cost a lot of money to translate different languages, thus affecting global trade productivity. Thus, language barrier can affect global trading significantly. With better communication and less misunderstanding, relationships built on good communication tend to be stronger and can even help participants find opportunities for personal growth. For the reasons above, we the pro side have provided sufficient evidence to prove that having fewer languages can create a world with less conflict caused by language barrier, and can also create a more wealthy world which perfectly matches our definition of better. In conclusion, the pro side strongly believes that the world would be a better place if there were fewer languages. Thank you.
Construct this speech 4 minutes.
Greetings, honorable judges and fellow debaters. We, the counting, firmly object the resolution that the world will be a better place if there are fewer languages. Before our statement, we would like to discuss the influence of language in all aspects. Language is an essential component of human culture, identity, and heritage. It's through language that we express our thoughts, emotions, and ideas. And without it, our ability to connect with each other and our past will be greatly diminished. And our definition of a better world is that the more language there are, the better world it is. Because the world with diverse language has more cultures, and it will become a more colorful world, compared to a less language, culture, a black and white world. It's more beautiful if there are a lot of different kinds of culture in the world.
First, language is precious, and linguistic diversity is also essential for maintaining cultural diversity. Language and culture are closely linked, and many endangered languages are spoken by indigenous people who are also the owners. of some of the world's most culturally diverse regions. If the language doesn't exist now, we can fully understand the information which is written by them. That might stop others from learning these precious information that was owned by a few people. For example, in the study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, lead researcher Rodrigo Camara Larrett, a biologist at the University of Zurich, she set out to study 3 languages, including North America, the northwestern Amazon, and New Guinea, containing 230 aboriginal languages and associated medical plant usages of 12,000 species. And research has shown that the loss of languages has more serious consequences for the traditional knowledge of medical plants than the loss of the plants themselves. The associated risk is greatest in the northwestern Amazon, where all unique knowledge and medical plants is in endangered languages. The study predicts that the loss of linguistic diversity will severely impair the human capacity for medical discovery. This knowledge includes plant data for fungal infections, tree bark for digestive problems, fruit for respiratory ailments, and even natural stimulants. The researcher Kamara describes the endless uses of plants are impressive. Even the best botanical specialists are amazed by the breadth of knowledge of aboriginal cultures, not only about plants but also animals and their relationship. According to the above research inference, we believe that the language is precious because of maintaining cultural diversity.
Secondly, a world with fewer language will limit the ability of people to express themselves and share their ideas with others. The grammatically structures used in the language can reflect cultural concepts and ways of thinking. For instance, the Japanese language has different verb forms to express different levels of politeness, reflecting the importance of social heritage and respect in Japanese culture. If language becomes fewer, people are forced to conform to a single way of thinking and expressing themselves, which can be determined to creativity and innovation. Finally, language diversity promotes democracy and human rights. The ability to express oneself in one's native language is a fundamental human right, and the loss of a language can lead to the marginalization and oppression of minority groups. A world with fewer language means that the cultural and linguistic diversity of the world's people is diminished, and their right to express themselves is crucial. However, if the language is well preserved, the probability for this problem to happen will be lower than if the language is not preserved. In sum, we firmly affirm the resolution that the world won't be a better place if there are fewer languages. Thank you.
Children and preparation.
Greetings. Okay, for my first question. How are are you sure that cultural diversity always brings positive effect to the society?
Okay. Language that always carries meanings and reference beyond itself. The meanings of a particular language reflects the culture of the particular social group. To interact with a language means to do so with the culture which is its reference point.
Like, do you have any evidence, like quote anyone who speak the same argument, has the same argument?
You want to see the
Or you can just explain.
explain? Yeah, because we say about the language and the culture are linked, and the interact with a language means to do with the culture, which is its reference point. We could not understand a culture without having direct access to its language because of their intimate connection.
So can we have a question? So in your constructive speech, I didn't hear that you define what your pure language means. So can you give us your pure language?
We do have a definition of fewer. Our definition of fewer is fewer can be interpreted simply as a smaller quantity which may bring about a difference in some way.
But how much, which your fewer is?
I think this does not really, in fact, our debate today. The exact number does not really matter this much.
I want to ask you, how significantly is language impact on identity?
The language one uses tends to be an essential defining element of a person's identity. In addition to its role as a communication tool, it carries an important symbolic value in defining how people are perceived by others and how they see themselves and their place in society.
Why is it important of that?
Because if you don't have your identity in the society, you might lose yourself. You might can't find a stand in the society that will cause cultural identity.
Do you have evidence to prove your assumption?
Yeah, I have evidence right there.
Can we see the evidence?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have a question is that you say about good communication with real languages, but we also have language barriers in same languages because like different places there are different verbs to say about sensing. So will it be a good communication with, will there have good communication except in fewer languages?
Yes, I believe that's how we argue our arguments.
But I think what you just
Children and preparation.
Greetings, honorable judges and fellow debaters. This is the prose I speak. I will now start by rebutting some of the points made in the first speech by the opposing team. First of all, the con-side argued that we may create obstacles to cultural preservation if there are fewer languages. However, with fewer languages, we are also able to preserve cultures. According to the relationship between language, culture, and development of society written by Katerina Lust, language can be separated from culture or being compared to culture as an equal element. Some aspects of their culture, such as custom and traditional festivals, can be spread in common use language, which can let more people understand their cultures and still be able to help preserve them even with fewer languages. Furthermore, culture is shared characteristics of a group of people which contains place of birth, religion, language, cuisine, social behaviors, art, literature, and music. Therefore, other kinds of culture can also be seen as a cultural identity, not only language, but also food or religion and so on. Those can all be interpreted as a region or a nation's feature and be recognized by people from different cultures. Furthermore, the con-side also did not provide us enough evidence or concrete statistic to prove that how big language plays a part in being a means of culture carrier, because like we argued before, language can be separated from culture or being compared to culture as an equal element, which proves that language is not always the vital part of one's cultural identity.
Furthermore, the con-side argued that a language right is a human right, but the main topic today is the world already has fewer languages. So there's no denying that language rights are human rights, but there's only little correlation with today's topic. Furthermore, the con-side also argued that language can increase our cultural diversity. However, they did not explain why cultural diversity always brings positive effects, like we asked in our first crossfire. They only said about social, they only explained the diversity of it, but they didn't prove that it always brings benefits. And according to Andrew Budden, a famous column writer, the greatest disadvantage of cultural diversity is creating social tension. The tensions caused by language are thought to be worsened by cultural differences. And language diversity negatively affects communication in multinational teams, thus influencing knowledge processing. Hence, language diversity is an important and influential factor in knowledge sharing in international context, teamwork, and organizations. And now, the pro-side will elaborate more on our arguments. In response to our previous argument that language barriers may decrease economic growth, the pro-side has found a serious evidence that proves that countries that lack language skills may not just open to the opportunity in the same way as people who speak the mainstream language. Top Digital Language has indicated that two countries sharing a common language can increase bilateral trade by 75% to 170%. Also, the BIS committee identified that the lack of language proficiency is extremely likely to be a barrier for developing foreign markets, which has indirectly proven that language barriers and miscommunication could cause a direct impact on profitability in a negative way. For the reasons above, we firmly believe that the world would be a better place if there are fewer languages, since there are less conflicts and misunderstanding. Also, it decreased the language barrier decline. Also, it creates a more wealthy and equal world. Thank you.
Greetings, honorable judges and fellow debaters. This is a con-side speaking. And we want to say about that communication, or a point that you said about communication easily. Fewer languages doesn't mean easier communication. As long as there are more than one language in the world, there will be communication barriers, unless you want to reduce the language limit into the world to only one. It could even mean a dangerous situation with billions of people fighting against each other, rather than smaller groups as in the past. This could be the most important drawback. As more people speak one language, it becomes easier for billions to be influenced by shallow media or aggressive politicians.
And we have a warrant that can show how linguistic diversity plays an important role in the world now. And linguistic diversity can also foster innovation. When people from different linguistic and cultural backgrounds come together, they bring with them different perspectives and approaches to problem solving. This can lead to more creative solutions and new ideas. For example, companies that encourage employees to speak their native languages and share their cultural perspective have been found to be more innovative. In summary, there are economic benefits to be gained from embracing linguistic diversity, such as a multilingual workforce, a thriving language service industry, cultural tourism, and fostering innovation. And I have another research that can support my ideas. Is that a study published in the journal Mechanical Science examined the relationship between linguistic diversity and innovation in multinational teams. The researchers found that teams with members who spoke different native languages generated more innovative ideas compared to teams with homogeneous language backgrounds. The study suggests that linguistic diversity facilitated a broader range of perspectives and cognitive flexibility, which contribute to increased innovation. And I'll say about the global companies require the multilingual person to help the economy benefits. Like many global companies recognize the value of linguistic diversity in driving innovation. For instance, Google, a renowned tech company, actively promotes language diversity among its employees. They have implemented programs that encourage employees to speak their native languages, provide translation services for meetings, and even offer language learning resources. This approach is aimed at fostering a multicultural and innovative work environment.
And for human rights, we want to give us some impact to prove that human rights is important. Because we definitely have a right to choose what language we want to use, to learn or use. But in the modern world, there are some dominant language in different society or regions all over the world. In that case, we might choose the most dominant language to use because its benefits are more than the original language we use. But for that, it's for the common language that we use, but we still can keep our native language that we can preserve our own culture. But like you said, arts and custom or even things else can preserve it too. But language is, like we said about the language and culture, language is a carrier about it's carry meanings and reference beyond itself. Like language represents the culture of a particular social group. So language is one of the most important things that preserve its culture. Thank you.
And you didn't give us your definition of failure. So if the definition of failure is to decide to listen. Okay, thank you.
Human exploration.
you just argued that while we all speak the same language may limit our creation and innovation. But my question is, if we speak a different language, how are we even able to communicate with each other?
Yes, we'll have different ideas when we speak in different languages. But if we are going to communicate with others, like doing academic exchange or some conversation with the companies, we need to use a common language to use that. So
What's the common language?
common language, like spoken.
Like we are spoken, like we are,
Yeah, because the native language are not spoken by a lot of people.
So do you mean
But
that
that's my question.
can happen
Can you help me later? You don't give a viewer if the definition of viewer is like decrease the common language, like what I said is like spoken by a lot of people. That won't help communication easily because that won't be a common language in the world, so everybody can't understand what you're talking about.
we didn't mention in our argument that with that the fewer languages, that means that the distinct common use language. We did not mention that in our argument. And to follow up my previous question, we mentioned that we still need a common language to interact with people, right? So is that how fewer languages can help us communicate better?
No, because when we have our native language, we'll have a lot of ideas like we mentioned in our rebuttal speech. So if we fewer languages, our creativity and innovation will be lower than before.
But we have to use a common language to express the idea. But then what's the purpose of the existence of the native language in this conversation? Like we have to communicate with each other in a common language that both sides understand.
so we have to use a common language to discuss things during a conversation with people with different languages, right? But because they might not speak our native language, but that will not end up with our native language's superior. For instance, we can chat with our friends using by our native language, or even with like our family members. Those kind of situations in which you can let our mother tongue to be survived. And for daily life, you won't go on the street and say common language with the people in your same country, right?
Okay, so can you name some example that native language can promote innovation?
The ring road. How is that?
How is it? Over. Thank you.
I would like to say we do have a definition of fewer that can be interpreted as simply as a smaller quantity which may bring about difference in some way in the world. We cannot define how small, how fewer the languages are in this topic. The Kansai argued that we may create many obstacles for cultural preservation, but we successfully rebutted by saying that with fewer languages we can still preserve those cultures, we can use common use language to interpret their culture, and let more people understand it and help preserve them. And the Kansai also said about when two people with different ideas communicate, they still need a common use language to communicate. That means that fewer languages can help communication effectively. Also, the Khan argued about language as an impact on cultural identity, and they didn't give us how much of an impact is it. And we successfully rebutted by saying that there are other cultural carriers rather than language. We do not mean that language is more important. We do not mean that language is more important than others. We mean that there are other carriers rather than language. And also, the council argued that a language right is a human right, but they also said in their rebuttal speech about how we choose what languages we want to say, or whether it is a dominant language or a native language. What does that mean? That we have the right to choose, which doesn't violate our human rights. It's how we choose what we want to say, and so we found that the Kansai's argument invalid. And the Kansai also argued about language diversity and cultural diversity, but we successfully rebutted by saying that the greatest advantage of cultural diversity is creating social tension. The tensions caused by languages are thought to be worsened by cultural differences. And language diversity negatively affects communication in multinational teams. And furthermore, we would like to restate our arguments. Our first argument is that there are less misunderstanding caused by languages. And the second, it's easier to understand people and let announcements spread more easily. Third, that language gap can cause misunderstanding and cause translation errors. And fourth, with language barrier with fewer languages can decrease economic decline. On the contrary, we provided sufficient evidence and argument to support our argument, our claims, and thank you.
Council received 2 minutes.
Greetings, honorable judges and fellow debaters. And our statement is that the world won't be a better place if there are fewer languages. First, our definition of a better world is that the more culture we have, the better world we have. So we're going to give an example that our opponent asked me to give them. And for example, India is a country that is home to a large number of languages, both major and indigenous. Over the years, India has shown that promoting major languages does not necessarily mean reducing the importance of indigenous languages. Here are some examples of evidence that support this idea. The Constitution of India. The Indian Constitution recognized 22 languages as official languages of the country. This includes both major languages like Hindi, English, and Bengali, as well as indigenous languages like Assami, Kashmiri, and Konaki. And another is that education. India has a system of education that promotes multilingualism. Children are taught in their mother tongue or regional language up to the primary level. Later, they can choose to study other languages, including major ones, in addition to their mother tongue. This has helped preserve the diversity of indigenous languages while also promoting major languages. And our opponents say that we didn't give the right to the people to choose their own language. Yeah, but we do have to give the right to choose to let the people choose their own languages to speak. But if we use our mother tongue to speak or to converse, to do a conversation with the others, that is not efficient. and you can fully express your thought by using your own language. So on my side, we decide to use a common language because then somebody else will understand you more clearly, not just use a translation. And also, when you use a translation, you will have translate problems like the idioms or the verbs that can be translated into the common language. So if we use the translation to translate our speaking, that might be a huge problem during the conversation. And second, I will talk about the medical usage. Secondly, medical usage is quite important for some situations. We have mentioned that in our constructive speech. Research has shown that the loss of languages has more serious consequences for the traditional knowledge of medical plants than the loss of the plants themselves. It's very clear that if we lose some of the languages, we might lose a very key idea or usage about things, because we can ensure that there will be a lot of new disease or sickness in the future. So we need to maintain that medical usage to prevent that disease. Thank you.
So many information.
Did you mention in your argument that India promotes a major language?
Yes.
So do you, do you mean that there are still language barriers in those 22 officially recognized languages, so that they need to promote a common language to communicate?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Do you mean that there are still language barriers in those 22 officially recognized languages, so that the Indian government needs to promote a common use language to communicate?
Yeah, there will be still language barriers during the 22 languages. But we gotta say that if we have only one language or only two languages, we'll have language barriers too. Like we're saying the same language, but we'll have language barriers.
Do you agree that the proportion of having language barrier and communication obstacles may decrease significantly in a good?
Can you repeat?
Do you agree that even if we cannot reduce the language to only one language, but the proportion of obstacles created while communicating can decrease significantly?
Well, I don't think that, because when we use the same language, we'll still have language barriers, as my constructive speech and as my teammate said. And we'll have some evidence to prove that.
So do So if we have a common language, so why can't we just keep our native language? Then we have more language and more culture, because we said that our point is that more culture, the better world it is. So why we should decrease the world into a free language world?
So I guess what we're arguing right now is that those minority language speaker does not know how to speak common language, which creates language barrier and obstacles of communicating.
So if those minority groups didn't join the society, why will they know common language? So they just use their native language.
So, do you mean that two native languages can communicate?
They can communicate in their own group,
But they tend to academic exchange global, like to the other countries people. That will not have the knowledge expressed.
Do you mean that we need a common language to communicate effectively?
But that will be one language, not fewer languages.
Common language doesn't mean we can only have one common language, like
But you don't plus the S. Common languages. A common language. A common language.
forget it as.
So there's only one common language, there's no common languages.
Okay, that's language. What is translation?
Greetings, honorable judges and fellow debaters. We the pro side firmly believe that the world will be a better place if there are fewer languages. For the final focus, I would like to compare both sides' arguments and restate our core value. The opposing team argued that having more languages in the world can allow people from different cultures to express creation and many things. However, they fail to understand that if we still have to use a common language to express it, the creativity and innovation of native language still cannot be conveyed. Furthermore, they also fail to prove that how cultural diversity can always bring positive effect to a society and ignore the disadvantages and harms we argued during the rebuttal speech. The con side proposed that people may be multilingualism while they can speak their native language and mainstream language at the same time, but fail to acknowledge that we cannot and are not able to force people to learn a brand new language. All the reasons above have made their arguments and core value of having language can promote innovation and create a better world invalid. As for our expectation of a better world, we want to live in a world with less friction and more harmony, a world where people are wealthier and can communicate with each other and understand each other better. Information is also being spread more effectively. And I'm proud to say that we, the pro side, has won the debate by stating several arguments to demonstrate that having fewer languages can achieve our goal by leading to better understanding and promoting the economic growth rate and thus creating a better world. Thank you.
Final property, 2 minutes.
Greetings, judges, honorable judges and the debaters. The concept that we surely reject that the world will be a better with fewer languages. And to maintaining language diversity is to recognize that all individuals or groups enjoy basic language human rights. This is a modern era. Civilization is based on respect. We have no reason to care about other human rights, but we don't care about language human rights. And whether the language which is spoken by fewer people seem to exist or not has little to do with our daily life. But for those people who speak minority language, if we cut them off, it will cause their major impact and even crisis. For instance, the medical plans or some important information that was written in a foreign language, it will bring more creativity and ideas to enrich the world, and also make the world a better place. And for your side, for our side, we think that because with different languages, we have language barriers, just like you mentioned, but in the same language, we still have language barrier, and we still have misunderstandings. And just like we are doing right now, because we are saying the same language English, but we still don't agree with others, and we still have confusions, and with more confusions, we have stress that you say. And for your side, there's no evidence to prove that this understanding in the same language or even a common language there are nothing to prove that it will be less or decreasing. And also cultural diversity that we have proved in our summary speech and also rebuttal speech. So you point out that point. You point out it. So I didn't really know what you want to say about. And for all, we want to say that we firmly reject that the world will be a better place with fewer languages. Thank you.